Welcome back to Inside Personal Growth. This is Greg Voisin, the host of Inside Personal Growth, and I want to thank all of our listeners who join us from around the world to listen to the words of wisdom from our authors. And today on the line, I have Andreas Moritz, who's joining us from the Carolinas, and Andreas is a health expert in his field, and he has a book called Timeless Secrets of Health and Rejuvenation. And I have to admit that this is you want to talk about breakthrough medicine for the 21st century. This is a wonderful book. Good day to you, Andreas. How are you?
Thank you. I'm absolutely great today.
Well, we appreciate having you on, and I'm going to let our listeners know a little bit about you, Andreas, and then we're going to get into a series of questions here. Andreas is the author of many books, but he lectures and he's a practitioner in the field of alternative and integrative medicine. He's also the author of over a dozen books on various subjects pertaining to holistic health, and is most well known for his books The Amazing Liver and Gallbladder Flush, The Timeless Secrets of Health and Rejuvenation, and Cancer is Not a Disease. His ideas have appeared in USA Today. And in the 90s, he began the self-publishing self-help books on alternative medicine and mind-body-spirit integration. Andreas had some medical challenges himself from the early age of 6, dealing with arrhythmia, anemia, abnormally low blood pressure, and frequent fainting and irritable bowel syndrome. Although he had challenges with this, he then went on and went into the practice of ideology, and we trained under his uncle, Dr. Harry, how do you pronounce his last name? Kirchhofer. Yep, in Switzerland. And, you know, his background is in Ayurvedic medicine, and we're going to be speaking about that. And he's traveled the world, and he has just amazing credentials. And if you want to look for more of his credentials, I would recommend that you go to his website as well. But I'd really like to get into the heart of the matter, because there just is, this book, for my listeners, is in excess of 500 pages long. Now, I would look at it as more of a reference book as well. But if you wanted to go into any area of it, just by taking the index and going through it, you can do it. And it is amazingly well done and exceptional read. So, Andreas, you mentioned that that the state of health is a reflection of how we perceive ourselves and our world. Can you comment, because I think this is the basis foundation that you wrote in the introduction to your book, for our listeners, why you follow this path, why our listeners would want to know more about that?
Well, basically, perception creates a reaction or response inside of us, and how we respond to any given situation, whether it's a dramatic, traumatic situation like the loss of money, a job, or a loved one, or whether it is a disease that is afflicting us. How we respond to it is literally determining whether we recover and benefit from that incident, or whether we go down with it. And so our response is the most important in all of that. Unfortunately, in the medical system as we have it today, we are being presented with like cut realities. These are like written in stone realities, where you have cancer and this is how much you have to live unless you take these treatments. We don't even are given a choice how to respond to it. And however, we do have that choice. And I've found in over the 37 years of practicing in this field that the choices that we can take are fantastically successful if we dare step into that and take self-responsibility for what is happening to us. We may not be able to change what happened to us, but we certainly can change our response to it.
And I think that Western medicine has a tendency to engulf people with kind of this fear of taking that alternative path. Don't you think that happens sometimes? If someone gets cancer, I'll just use an example. My son got chronic myelogenous leukemia at 21, and at the time there was a drug called Gleevec, and that was the only treatment. But what it was the only treatment from Western medicine. What he did do, though, is he got heavily involved in Zen and meditation practice. He went into a vegan diet, and I actually believe it was those things that cured him, not so much the Gleevec.
Oh, you're absolutely right. There's actually a huge amount of research being done that the things that make us better are far more successful than the things that we suppress or try to correct with medication or with any other therapies. So by focusing on the things that really work, there's every day almost a new study coming out on vitamin D alone and how vitamin D, which is induced, or produced by our body in response to sun exposure, we literally have the ability to reverse cancers by up to 70%. Now, imagine that if any other therapy would have that kind of success rate, or any drug would have that success rate, it would be the best-selling drug in forever. And so we somehow forget that we have these healing gifts already built into our system, but we hardly ever use them. So vitamin D, which controls or turns on 2,500 genes in our body and turns them off when needed. We have vitamin D as a cardiovascular protection. We use vitamin D to allow our brain to function properly. It literally can prevent almost every kind of illness, and it can also help to reverse or correct any kind of imbalance in the body. And there are thousands of studies now to prove it. However, it is not being reported. It's not being, doctors don't tell their patients go out in the sun because they have been told that the sun is dangerous. You have to stay away from it. So now we have 85% of the population being vitamin D deficient. So people, when they're vitamin D deficient, they have a 55% higher risk of obesity. They have a huge risk of developing cancers, all kinds of cancers. We now know that just having normal vitamin D levels goes along with a 400% lower risk of developing colon cancer, which is one of the leading cancers. So again, a simple thing like vitamin D is such a fantastic thing to prevent illness. A good diet, we now know that eating meat on a regular basis increases the risk of dying by 20% from all illnesses. That includes diabetes, osteoporosis, heart attacks, cancers, and so on. So you have, again, a very, very simple way, just by correcting one's diet and eating more sensibly and from more, good sources such as organic vegetables and fruits and grains and legumes and nuts and seeds and things like that, which is ideal for the human body because that's how we were meant to eat. Because our our digestive system is not capable of digesting such heavy foods as meat, because our hydrochloric acid is only 1/10 of that of a carnivorous animal. So we only digest 10% of it, and the rest of it will decay or rot in the intestines, which then becomes obviously a source of illness.
Yeah, and I've been a vegetarian for 20 plus years, and I just, the diet, to me, again, it's my preference. Like you said, we have choices. It's always been my diet a preference. And your book deals with this down-to-earth issues of health, such as lifestyle, diet, nutrition, exercise, daily routines, as you mentioned, exposure to sunlight. But it's kind of based on Ayurvedic medicine. And I think some of our listeners out there, even though Deepak Chopra is somebody who kind of maybe has exposed the world even a little more to that. Explain the types, because I know I've read some about Ayurvedic medicine, and this isn't this one of your fundamental areas that you work with people on?
Yes, certainly, because we are not all made in the same way. So you're even just going on the street, you see thin people that walk very quickly, and they talk very quickly. You hear them constantly saying something, and so they are sort of the more agile people. And then you have the ones that are very slow, methodical, and they are more well built, so they have heavier bones. They have more body mass to them, and their skin. When you look at the back of their hands, you're not able to see the veins and the bones sticking out. They're well covered. So they're different body types, and there's one that is standing out. You can see them from far away. They have red hair, bright red hair. There's the so-called Pitta body types, Pitta, and they have a lot of fire, a lot of heat in their body, so they don't get cold easily. They complain about wherever they go. I need to take something off because I'm too hot. There's the Vata, the thin body type that moves very quickly, that talks very quickly. That if he eats very congesting foods like heavy foods like meat or potatoes, dry foods, then that person will get constipated. Whereas the Pitta body type, if he eats the same food, he won't get constipated at all. So there are certain foods which are useful for one body type and not useful for another. Likewise, there are certain climates which are more beneficial for one person than for another. And we have to sort of find out what we are, and the book gives you hints in finding out your body type and what kind of foods are more conducive to the functioning and the metabolism in your body.
And so do you assist people on this path where you'll take them through an assessment to determine body type?
Exactly. And,
yeah.
And the book has actually a questionnaire where you can put in all the qualities, the characteristics that you experience. The question just simply by answering some questions. Then you count the points, and you'll find out which body type you are. But simply by looking at the descriptions of body types, you will already know, oh, that's me, that's me, that's me, and you're very clear. About why you are in a certain way, why you respond to stress in a given way, why do you look in a certain way, and so that makes you feel like there's nothing wrong with you. This is just how your body type is, and then each body type has, of course, psychological characteristics as well. And if you know more about yourself, then you can use that more easily to determine how you want to live your life and what you need from the environment. We know that sunlight is such an important factor for all body types. We are not born with sunshades in front of our eyes. We are supposed to receive all the rays that come from the sun in order to produce specific hormones in the brain, and those hormones regulate the production of melanin in the skin, which protects the skin against damage. You put sunshades on, then that protective mantle is basically lost. You become susceptible to injury, and then you have these self-fulfilling prophecies that the medical system is putting out. Sunshine is dangerous, but they don't tell you that sunshades is actually one of the leading causes of skin cancers, because it removes the protection, the melanin protection in the skin. So these are simple things that we ought to know in order to stay healthy. There's not really very much one has to do. There's hydration. Obviously, many people getting dehydrated because they're not drinking water, which is the natural thing to drink, whereas they drink other things like coffees, too much coffees or teas or artifactual drinks, which are removing fluid from the body rather than putting fluid into the body. They are called diuretics. And so again, once we have knowledge that hydration is so essential to produce digestive secretions, to allow the blood to remain fluid enough and not get too thick, for delivering nutrients to the cells in our body to take up oxygen and allow the oxygenation to occur properly, for the metabolism to be proper. So once we know all of that, then we have the power to make choices, and it's again all about self-empowerment. Once we know that we can handle any given situation and any disease that might pop up simply by restoring health, you're going back to, like, let's say, a healthy sleeping habit, which we now know is responsible for numerous events, like for pure low immunity, for example. You can restore the immune system simply by sleeping 8.5 or between 8 and 9 hours at night. People who are overweight, there's a new study that just came out. It was done at the University of Chicago, and the study was released at the Annals of Internal Medicine on the 4th of October. And it basically tells people if you sleep 8.5 hours and you are overweight, you lose 55% more body fat than a person who doesn't sleep enough hours.
Wow,
So
so
that's a huge,
that's a huge finding. So
and so
getting
instead
more
of
rest.
exactly, and instead of trying to go on severe diets and exercise programs, just sleep the right amount of time at the right time of the night, which is between 10 and 6. That's the best time to sleep. You automatically speed up your metabolism. You balance the hormones in the body that regulate hunger and thirst, and so you have no more the cravings that make you overeat and that sort of thing. And these are studies that are showing they're coming up in frequency right now that tell people the power is in your hands to make yourself healthy if you're not, and to stay healthy if you want to,
Yeah.
and live a long, healthy life.
Well, one of the things that I think people are dealing with more and more today, and have been as society speeds up, is stress, and it's a big issue for people today. And we know that the cortisol levels, because this has been reported everywhere, are going to increase with the higher levels of this continual stress. It's almost like the fight or flight syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
What recommendations do you have for our listeners who, in this economic time, in this challenged time with high unemployment, all the things that are going on, we know that's a mental state, but, and they know they need to meditate and shift the way that they think about what it is, but what additionally can they do from a physical standpoint and a mental standpoint and a spiritual standpoint to get beyond that stress?
Well, if you fight the stress or you try to solve a problem, you're stuck with the idea that there's something wrong. On the other hand, you can have a more accepting mode because negative things actually are propelled into our direction by positive reasons. And that this sometimes is very hard to grasp. But in my life, I found, I discovered that every negative thing that ever happened to me turned out to be a blessing. It was something that I needed to experience so that I would discover something else that then would help hundreds and thousands of people. So I discovered that for myself, and I've written a book about it, Lifting the Veil of Duality, where for every negative event there is a positive reason behind it. And in religion, Jesus Christ said, love your enemies, love your adversities, love the things you don't like, because when you do, when you accept them into your life, then they transform into a useful counterpart. And so that's something that people might want to consider when dealing with stress, because stress is not something that impacts us. It's our response to it that does. And so when we always have the option to take a couple of deep breaths and say, I'm not going to react right away. I'm going to react in 2 minutes. That means that you put the power back into your court. You are now in charge. How you're going to respond to it. And that will determine whether you come up with a good solution to this issue or not. Whereas when you're stressed over something and you stay in your fear mode and you try to push away something you don't like, that moment you're stuck with it. Instead of doing that, you can just as well focusing, just like if you don't like darkness, you go to the light switch and you turn on the light. You don't have to fight the darkness. You just bring in a different element. So if you are stressed, maybe all you need is a good night's rest. Because when you, let's say, stay up until midnight and you're trying to figure things out, and then you cannot sleep properly, the next day you are not clear. You have your brain issues. The blood circulation into the brain has been diminished so incredibly. There are more toxins moving around the system. Your stress hormones go up in order to cope with the lack of sleep and the deprivation of energy that has arisen because of that. So there are simple things you can do. Get a good meal that is satisfying you. Do the things that make you joyful. Like just taking off and doing something for yourself, just for yourself, not for someone else. Then this can recharge your batteries, and you feel so much better shortly afterwards.
Well, that's great advice. And one of the other things that you speak about, and I think that many of our listeners might know this, but we don't pay attention much like you do, and I think the book articulates it well. You mentioned that the cells in our body are regenerating about every 2 to 10 days. What are these built-in mechanisms that you can help us from stopping this aging process? Because everybody today is talking about, anti-aging this, anti-aging that. And truly, we're like a copy machine, aren't we? And then when one of those cells mutates, that's where the challenge actually begins, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely true. Because when we accumulate toxins over a number of years, and toxins, we have a lot of environmental toxins. Just look at the chemtrails, that are spewing, huge amounts of aluminum and other chemicals into our drinking water. That's just, there are new studies coming out that show that we have 50,000 times more aluminum in our drinking water that is dumped from the sky, and that is very, very toxic. And that's just one of the toxins. There are so many food, toxins added, to our, processed food. So people are getting poisoned, by the drugs that they take, the medicines that they take, because these are chemicals the body has great difficulty eliminating. So I typically tell people, clean out your liver, and that's why I've written the book, Amazing Liver and Gallbladder Flush, to make sure that we don't keep gathering and collecting toxins in the body and dumping them into the connective tissues, and that then make the organs weaker and weaker and suffocate the cells. So to allow the natural turnover of cells every 2 to 10 days or 6 weeks for muscle cells, for example, and once a month for every skin cell. So in order for those cells to be vital and to remain that way, we need to make sure that the body is cleansed from time to time. And cleaning out the liver is obviously one of the most important ways to make sure that the rest of the body stays neat and clean, because the liver is the blood cleansing organ number one, and it retrieves and takes out these toxins, passes them into the bile ducts. Unfortunately, that causes a coagulation of the bile. The bile becomes thick and hardens into little pebbles and stones, and these are called intrahepatic gallstones by Johns Hopkins University. And when they are clogging the bile flow, then we don't digest food well anymore. Once the food digestion is interfered with, then the nutrients will not get to the cells. The cells will become weaker and age. And so then we have a fast process of aging. People who have a clean liver, you can tell from their skin, from their appearance, from the muscle tone, the lack of excessive fat in the body, that their metabolism, their digestion is efficient, and their detoxification system is very effective too. So I found that people who do liver flushes on a regular basis or clean out the liver within like 2, 3, a couple of series of liver flushes, then they will have a completely different energy to them. They look radiant, their eyes look radiant, the skin is without any blemishes and age spots and things like that. So a natural way to keep the body healthy.
Well, that is one of those organs that I don't think many people out there think much of. They just take it for granted, yet it's the house of cards that operates everything within our body. And that
Right.
liver flush, I think, is so important. You state that if we produce enough endorphins, serotonin, and
Mm.
interleukin 2, that we're able to arrest this aging process. Now, I know that serotonin is a chemical that's released in endorphins through exercise. People that have low serotonin levels get depressed. Some of them end up committing suicide. I
Oh,
actually
yeah.
know a friend whose daughter committed suicide when they did her serotonin levels. There weren't any. They couldn't find any.
Right.
So how is it that you can help people improve these through natural foods and processes? You'd give people exercise programs and so on to improve it so that it reduces this or arrests, as you said, the aging process.
Well, the brain hormones are very, very powerful, and they are interlinked with the biological rhythms in our body. And the largest rhythm that we know of is the circadian rhythm. So it's the sunrise, sunset, and the cycles that they involve. So in the morning when the sun is rising, you naturally start producing serotonin. And serotonin, even though it's called a brain hormone, in fact, 90% of it is produced in the digestive system, and 5% in the brain, and only 5% in the blood. So most of the serotonin is created in the digestive tract, which shows that that eating the biggest meal of the day at midday serves you best, because that's when your digestive system makes the most serotonin. And once you make a lot of serotonin, which is at midday, and you make the most, then you digest your food most efficiently, and you have the best nutrients going to the cells in your body, including the brain cells. So when you eat the biggest meal and heaviest meal in the evening, you naturally only digest about 10 to 15% of that food, because serotonin levels are that low. And so when you have inadequate digestion and a lot of undigested food piling up in the gastrointestinal tract, which decomposes and produces toxins, and it interferes with your sleep as well, as these toxins start circulating around the system during the nighttime, then you have a problem with the psychological aspect as well, because you wake up in the morning and you're feeling not good. You feel low in energy, you feel sluggish, depressed, and you don't have the energy. Once the energy levels are dropping, you cannot be happy. So for the body for you to be happy, you have to have a good amount of energy. And serotonin is linked with another hormone that's called melatonin. So when you are sleeping well during the night, and you have a long night's rest between 8 and 9 hours, and you sleep between 10 and 6, which is the time when you make the most melatonin. The next day, your serotonin levels will be higher, because melatonin is a breakdown product of serotonin, and serotonin is a breakdown product of melatonin, so they feed one another. So if you have a good amount of melatonin in the night, you will make a lot more serotonin during the day. If you're eating your main meal at lunchtime, you will not suppress serotonin levels. You will actually increase them, and then you have more melatonin to play with during the nighttime. So again, simple things like that were the secret of happy people in the olden days. And so they knew how to stay healthy, happy, and strong by following the circadian rhythms.
Well, so much of your advice in the book, Timeless Secrets of Health and Rejuvenation, it's it's practical advice. It's something that anybody can do. They can go anywhere and get the supplements. They can take the Ayurvedic quiz with inside the book. I mean, it really is an amazing book. I just again want to acknowledge you. But you state that disease, and this is my closing question, is the occurrence of a toxicity crisis, which you call it, which is the body's attempt, as you've been talking about, to balance this condition called homeostasis. And for some of our listeners, they're going to know what homeostasis is, and it's back to a level of balance. How is it that we can bring our body back into this balance and harmony? What would be some of the parting words that you would give around hydration, the kind of foods we would eat, how we would treat ourselves, meditation, the whole mind-body principle to actually get to this state of homeostasis?
Well, it's actually not difficult because the body is doing that naturally. And when you have a disease, that's the body's way of returning to that state of balance. So the disease itself is part of the healing mechanism and trying to remove toxins. An infection is not a disease. An infection is the invitation of the body inviting bacteria, germs to come into the system to dissolve, to break down, and to decompose cells that are already half dead, damaged, or dead. And so the body will never allow anything to attack healthy cells. And the body only allows bacteria to attack unhealthy cells. So the disease itself is already the healing response that the body is allowing or supporting. We don't have to invent that, and we don't have to fight it. So what we can focus on is eating food, the main meal at lunchtime, which will allow you to digest it more successfully. Have a lighter evening meal. Go to bed before 10 so that the body can you cleanse the bloodstream. The liver works between 10 and 2 more effectively than at any other time, and it needs all the blood from the back of the brain and from the digestive system and the muscles in order to cleanse the bloodstream. And not sleeping during that time obviously doesn't allow you to do that. So then the body accumulates toxins. If the toxins cannot be broken down because we are sleeping and hydration methods and eating habits are contrary to what the body really wants, then we need disease in order to take care of that. And we blame the disease for making us unwell, but the disease itself is the way to get us back to homeostasis, to balance. So in either way, whichever way we live, we are being corrected one way or another. But we should not fight that. We should support the body. We should allow the body to do its job effectively and not hold it up or suppress it when it is getting sick.
Well, Andreas, you definitely are a wealth of knowledge, and I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to invite you back to do another program, because I believe that for our listeners, I'm fascinated by what you're saying, and I believe that it's kind of hard to cover all of these topics, and I probably had about 6 more questions that I didn't have time to actually ask you today, but I would like to invite you back. And I'd like you to let our listeners know where they can go to get Timeless Secrets of Health and Rejuvenation. I know that I received it as an ebook. I think they can order it from your website as well. Where can they go to get more information about your books and your programs?
The best source of information is from my website, which is ener-chi.com, Ener-Chi.com. So ener-chi.com, or the books are available through Amazon or any other bookseller. But on my website you find all the information about other products as well that I created myself that have incredibly supportive benefits for the body to heal and return to balance.
Well, that's great. So it's Ener-Chi, and it's ENER-CHI. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Ener-Chi.com would be where my listeners would go. And again, Andreas, thanks so much. It's been really a pleasure having you on and really learning more about how our body wants to naturally heal itself, but also some of the things that we can do to assist in keeping it healthy along the way. So you've given me a lot of insight, and I do have some more questions I want to ask you, so I want to invite you back again. Okay. Thanks so much for being on with us today and enlightening our listeners as to The Timeless Secrets of Health and Rejuvenation. Thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you, Greg.